I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. The clock struck 2, the kind of hour when silence wraps the house like a shroud. I lay awake, a restless mind thwarting sleep's embrace. Tonight, the shadows seemed to whisper louder than usual, a nagging sense of unease creeping up my spine. Suddenly, the soft but distinct sound of the back door creaking open shattered the stillness. My heart raced, adrenaline surged. Was it a burglar? Instinctively, I reached for the baseball bat under our bed, the wood cool and solid in my grip. Creeping downstairs, I moved with the stealth of a shadow, my every sense heightened. The floorboards groaned underfoot as I approached the living room. The dim moonlight filtering through the curtains cast an eerie glow, revealing a figure rummaging through the drawers. "Who's there?" I demanded, voice steady despite my pounding heart. The figure froze, then slowly turned. It wasn't a burglar, but Mark, my wife Elena's co-worker. What in God's name was he doing here at this unholy hour? "Tom," he stammered, his face pale, I need to get something I left here." My grip on the bat tightened. "And you couldn't wait till morning?" It's complicated," Mark muttered, avoiding my gaze. Curiosity overcame my anger. "What did you leave that's so important?" I asked, my voice a low growl. He hesitated, then blurted, "My lucky underpants. I have a job interview tomorrow, and I can't go without them." Absurd as it sounded, his desperation seemed genuine. But why here? Why Elena's house? Seeing my confusion, Mark took a deep breath. "I've been seeing Elena. I didn't mean for it to happen, Tom. I'm sorry." The room spun, the words slicing through me like ice. Betrayal, raw and stinging, flooded my veins. I clenched the bat, my mind racing. Anger boiled over, yet a part of me needed to know everything. "Why here?" I managed to choke out. "She said it was safer. Less risky than our places," he whispered, shame etching his features. I threw the bat down, violence wouldn't reclaim my dignity or heal my heart. "Get out," I hissed. "And take your damn underpants." Mark scrambled to grab a pair of garish, lucky underpants from behind the couch and bolted out the door. The cold night swallowed him up. Alone, the silence returned, heavier than before. The betrayal was clear, the deceit laid bare. Elena's snores filtered down from our bedroom, a cruel reminder of the lie my life had become. Something within me hardened, resolve took shape. I would confront her, yes. But more than that, I would ensure such betrayal never went unpunished. My plan began to form, a scheme born of hurt and the cold clarity of betrayal. The morning would bring confrontation, but tonight, it brewed retribution. As dawn crept across the sky, painting it a bleak gray, I knew one thing for sure, our lives would never be the same. And as for Elena, she would learn the cost of treachery, measured not just in heartbreak but in the ruins of the life she once knew. The intrigue of how far I would go to balance the scales of justice had just begun. As the first rays of dawn spilled through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind a whirlwind of betrayal and scheming. The coffee in my cup had gone cold, untouched, as I replayed Mark's confession over and over. Elena's betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a festering cut that demanded cauterizing. The sound of footsteps alerted me to Elena's descent down the stairs. Her hair was tousled, eyes sleepy and unaware of the storm that was about to break. Seeing her in the morning light, so vulnerable, yet so deceitful, fueled my resolve. "Morning, Tom. Why are you up so early?" Her voice was soft, the familiar warmth now a venomous sting. Without a word, I slid the garish underpants across the table toward her. Her eyes widened, a silent gasp escaping her lips as she recognized them instantly. "What's this?" She tried to mask her panic with confusion, but her voice trembled. "Don't play dumb, Elena. Mark was here last night. Came to pick these up, I said, my voice cold and steady. Her face drained of color. Tom, Save it, I snapped. How long? She hesitated, then whispered, 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of deceit. The reality hit me like a punch to the gut. Why, Elena? Why him, why our home? She started to cry, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. That's your excuse. It just happened. My voice rose, a crescendo of hurt and anger. You brought him into our home, Elena. Our sanctuary. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm so sorry. Sorry wasn't enough. Not now. Not after everything. We're done, Elena. I want you out of this house. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Pack your things. I want you gone by tonight. But where will I go? Not my problem. You should have thought of that before you betrayed me. The coldness in my own voice surprised even me, but the pain was too deep, the wound too fresh. Elena stood, her body shaking as she absorbed the finality of my words. I'll stay with my sister, she murmured, her voice barely audible. Good. And we're getting a divorce. I'll contact a lawyer today. She nodded silently, defeated, then turned and walked up the stairs. The sound of her footsteps was a somber drumbeat to the end of our marriage. After she disappeared from view, I pulled out my phone. It was time to put the next part of my plan into action. If she thought the separation was the end of her consequences, she was mistaken. I dialed a number, my hand steady. Hello, Greg. It's Tom. I need to meet with you today. It's urgent. Greg, an old friend from college, now a top-notch private investigator, was about to become an instrumental part of my revenge. If Elena thought her life was broken now, she had no idea how far I was willing to go. Betrayal, after all, was a debt that demanded a steep payment, and I was ready to collect. The morning air was crisp as I drove to meet Greg at a quiet cafe downtown. The city was just waking up, the streets bustling with the early rush of commuters. Each stoplight was a moment of pause, a chance to reassemble my thoughts and steel myself for the conversation ahead. I found Greg already seated at a back table, his eyes sharp and assessing as I approached. Tom, he greeted, his voice low, a nod to the seriousness of our meeting. Greg. I sat down, my resolve firm. Thanks for meeting me on such short notice. He waved it off, his expression solemn. What's going on? You sounded pretty shaken up on the phone. Taking a deep breath, I laid it all out, the late-night discovery, Elena's confession, the impending divorce. Greg listened, his face a mask of professional detachment, only his tightening jaw betraying his anger on my behalf. And you want my help to dig deeper? See how far this goes? Greg asked after I finished. Yes. I want to know everything. Who else knew, how long they've really been at this, anything that can help me in the divorce. Greg nodded, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the table. I can do that. I'll start with Mark. See who else might be involved. Any mutual friends, co-workers who might have covered for them. Thank you, Greg. The relief of having an ally in this was palpable. Don't thank me yet. We don't know what we'll find. His tone was grim, a reminder that the truth might be darker than I anticipated. I nodded, understanding the unspoken warning. I need to know, regardless. Greg pulled out a notepad, already slipping into his role. I'll need access to her email, social media, anything you can provide that might lead to more clues. I slid him an envelope containing all the passwords. I prepared everything last night. Good. I'll get started right away. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. I'll be in touch. Expect something by tomorrow. As I drove back home, the emptiness of the house loomed in my mind. It would be the first time returning since Elena had left, her presence erased but not her betrayal. I braced myself for the silence that would greet me. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with the hollow sounds of my footsteps. Each room was a reminder of a memory tainted with lies. I made my way to the bedroom, the heart of the deceit, and began packing up her remaining belongings. Clothes, photos, trinkets, each item a shard of a shattered past. Midway through, my phone buzzed. A text from Greg, "Got something. Meet tonight." The day dragged on, each hour a tick toward the inevitable revelations. By the time evening came, my nerves were taut, anticipation mixed with dread. We met under the dim lights of the same cafe, the setting sun casting long shadows across the floor. Found emails between Elena and Mark going back 6 months, Greg started without preamble, sliding a folder across the table. "Not just planning meetings but talking about you, how to keep it hidden." It's damning. My heart sank, the finality of the betrayal settling in. "Anything else?" "There's more. A friend of theirs, Lucy, she knew. Helped cover for them a few times." The betrayal deepened, spreading like poison through my veins. "I want everyone involved to pay." Greg nodded, understanding the depth of my hurt. "I'll keep digging. There's likely more to uncover." As I drove home, the pieces of my plan took shape. Legal, thorough, but devastating. Elena's deceit would be met with the full force of my retribution, her world dismantled piece by piece. As the city lights blurred past, my resolve hardened. This was no longer just a divorce, it was a mission to reclaim my dignity and ensure that the price of betrayal was unforgettable. The final days of autumn brought a chill that seeped into the bones, mirroring the cold resolve that had settled in my heart. The cafe where I met Greg for the last time was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. Greg slid another folder across the table, his eyes dark with the gravity of his findings. "This is it, Tom. Everything you need for your lawyer. Financial infidelities, the lies, even her plans to leverage the divorce in her favor." I scanned the documents, each line a nail in the coffin of the life I once believed was mine. And the others? Lucy's involved deeper than we thought. Wasn't just covering, she benefited from their lies. Took bribes from Mark to keep silent. Greg's disdain was palpable. A bitter laugh escaped me. They were all in it together, then. Perfect. It's all there. Enough to ruin them. Greg paused, his voice softening. "Tom, are you sure about this? There's no turning back." "I've never been more certain," I replied, the finality in my voice more a promise than a statement. Leaving the cafe, the plan was clear in my mind. My first stop was the lawyer's office, where I laid out my demands for the divorce. Armed with the evidence, it was an onslaught that left no room for negotiation. Elena's financial treacheries would see her assets frozen, her credibility shattered. But it wasn't enough to just break her legally. I needed them all to feel the weight of their betrayal. Under the guise of seeking reconciliation, I invited Elena and Lucy to meet me at a rented luxury apartment, the same place Elena had first betrayed me. It was time for the final act. As they walked in, the opulence was a stark backdrop to the deception I was about to lay bare. "Elena, Lucy," I began, my voice eerily calm, "thank you for coming." Elena, hopeful yet cautious, nodded. "Tom, if this is about us." "It is," I cut her off. "About all of us. About betrayal." I tossed the folder onto the table, papers spilling out, evidence of their deceit plain to see. Lucy's face paled, her eyes darting to Elena, who stood frozen, shock registering as she absorbed the extent of her exposure. "What is this?" Elena's voice cracked. "Your downfall, I said simply. Every lie, every deceit, documented and ready to be used. Not just in court. I've made sure everyone knows. Your friends, your families, your employer. Lucy's voice was a whisper of terror. You wouldn't. I already have. Stepping back, I watched as their world crumbled, the truth too stark to deny. And there's more. Remember Mark's lucky underpants? I planted them, Elena. I invited him over, made sure you'd find out. The revelation hit them like a physical blow, the manipulation deeper than they could fathom. You played us. Elena's voice was barely audible, her realization of the depth of my planning dawning on her. Like you played me. My words were cold, devoid of any warmth we once shared. Security entered then, at my signal, their timing perfect. Please escort these two out. They're no longer welcome here, I instructed, the final severance of our ties. As they were led away, their pleading and denials fading into the distance, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had orchestrated the destruction of their deceit, using their own methods against them. It was ruthless, yes, but it was justice, served cold and calculated. I turned away from the chaos, a chapter closed forever. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness. Only the resolute step forward into a life free from the shadows of betrayal.